Today we immerse ourselves in a journey of discovery towards one of the most enigmatic and profound symbols in the Bible, the statue of Nebuchadnezzar. The Bible is full of mysteries and enigmas that challenge our understanding and invite us to explore the depths of faith and history. The statue of Nebuchadnezzar described in the book of Daniel is one of those mysteries that leads us to reflect on divine sovereignty, human purpose, and the nature of prophecy. Through this ancient relic, we can glimpse God's hand in human history and better understand our role in the divine plan. The statue of Nebuchadnezzar challenges us to delve deeper into the scriptures and seek a deeper understanding of the spiritual truth around us. Join me on this exciting journey as we explore the secrets hidden behind the statue of Nebuchadnezzar and delve into the depths of faith and divine revelation. Before we begin, I encourage you to like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. Remember to activate the notification bell so that YouTube notifies you every time we upload a new video. Let's start. The book of Daniel takes place during a tumultuous period in Israel's history. It is mainly set during the Babylonian captivity, a period in which King Nebuchadnezzar II of Babylon conquered Jerusalem and took many Jews, including Daniel and his fellow captives, to Babylon. This happened around the year 605 before Christ, when Nebuchadnezzar defeated King Jehoiakim of Judah and the Babylonian exile began. The Babylonian captivity lasted approximately 70 years, during which the Jews lived as exiles in Babylon. During this time, they experienced a profound religious and cultural crisis as they faced the challenge of maintaining their ethnic and religious identity in a pagan and hostile environment. The book of the prophet Daniel, which is part of the Old Testament in the Bible, is a work that combines historical narrative, apocalyptic prophecy, and moral and theological teachings. Its content is varied and fascinating, offering deep insights into Israel's history as well as prophetic visions about the future. Now, let's travel back in time to ancient Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilizations where the great city of Babylon was built. In the midst of his splendor, King Nebuchadnezzar, one of the most powerful rulers in history, has a dream that left them perplexed. This event is detailed in the book of the prophet Daniel, specifically in chapter 2, which we will analyze in depth. First of all, Nebuchadnezzar has a dream that disturbs him deeply, but when he wakes up, he cannot remember it. Let's read verse 1 of chapter 2 of Daniel. In the second year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign, Nebuchadnezzar had dreams, and his spirit was troubled, and his sleep left him. In the prime of his youth, Nebuchadnezzar ascended the throne and quickly consolidated his power. His ambitious construction plan in the cities of his kingdom earned him the fervent support of religious and civil leaders. At this juncture in his career, the king displayed a remarkable quality of greatness. Instead of continuing in a growing frenzy of accomplishment, he paused in order to think about the meaning of his life and the power he had achieved. What would be your destiny? And what would be the outcome of the empire she had so recently helped found? In his meditation, he dreamed dreams, although confusing. They served to stimulate even deeper thoughts and questions about destiny and ultimate significance. The text indicates that the king became disturbed in his spirit and lost sleep. God was behind these questions and dreams. In second place, King Nebuchadnezzar summons the magicians, astrologers, and wise men of Babylon to reveal his dream and the interpretation of it. Let's read verses 2 and 3. The king called for magicians, astrologers, enchanters, and Chaldeans to explain his dreams. So they came and stood before the king, and the king said to them, "I have had a dream, and my spirit is troubled because I know the dream." These questions became so urgent to Nebuchadnezzar that he took drastic measures to resolve his problems. He realized that his own intellectual efforts were not enough to find answers to his questions. Therefore, he decided to consult experts and specialists in science, philosophy, and religion. Although it is not completely clear what the function of each of the four groups mentioned was, it is believed that the magicians were experts in occult arts. Astrologers had access to supernatural knowledge through the study of the sky. Enchanters manipulated supernatural powers through incantations, and Chaldeans were the leaders of a priestly caste in Babylonian society. In third place, the king demands that they tell him the dream and its interpretation, threatening them with death if they do not do so. Let's read verses 4 through 6. Then the Chaldeans spoke to the king in the Aramaic language. "King, live forever. Tell the dream to your servants, and we will show you the interpretation." The king answered and said to the Chaldeans, "I forgot the matter. If you do not show me the dream and its interpretation, you will be torn to pieces, and your houses will be turned into dunghills. And if you show me the dream and its interpretation, you will receive from me gifts and favors and great honor. Tell me then the dream and its interpretation." The priestly representatives, the Chaldeans, spoke on behalf of the others and asked for a more exact exposition of the problem. They asked for specific details of the dream before attempting an explanation. This demand irritated the king, who claimed to have forgotten, and threatened them that if they did not show the dream and its interpretation, they would be torn to pieces. This refers to the ancient practice of dismembering a body. But at the same time, if they told the dream and its interpretation, the king said, "You will receive from me gifts and favors and great honor." Gifts, literally, gifts poured out in great abundance. It offered them prosperity and social position. Nebuchadnezzar did not ask much from these magicians, astrologers, enchanters, and Chaldeans. These men supposedly lived off their supposed ability to contact the gods and obtain secrets from the spiritual realm. If they were really what they said they were, then they would be able to tell Nebuchadnezzar both the dream and its interpretation. Fourthly, the wise men respond that the king's request is impossible to carry out, and that only the gods were capable of such a feat. The dispute is whether Nebuchadnezzar had really forgotten the dream, or was simply doing it to test the ability of the supposed wise men. If they could accurately describe the details of his dream, he could confirm the authenticity of his interpretation. Although the dream may or may not have been forgotten, the wise men's situation became desperate. Even so, God was acting to glorify his name and demonstrate to the powerful that he alone is God. Now, when he asked the king about the matter a second time, his anger increased. The king accused them of trying to gain time while the clock was ticking. If they really had supernatural abilities, they had to demonstrate it by telling him what he had dreamed. This revealed their hypocrisy, as they had no way of knowing the content of the dream. By making it a matter of life and death for the wise men, the king put them in a desperate situation. When they discovered that not even the king remembered the dream, they realized how serious their situation was. Trapped, they finally had to face the truth. Let's read verse 11. "For the matter that the king demands is difficult, and there is no one who can declare it to the king, except the gods whose dwelling is not with the flesh." The Chaldeans were forced to acknowledge their inability to reveal the dream. They told the king that he was asking for something that exceeded human power, and that no king had ever made such an unreasonable request of his subjects. In fifth place, Nebuchadnezzar decrees the death of all the wise men. Let's read verses 12 and 13. "For this reason the king in anger and with great anger ordered that all the wise men of Babylon be killed. And the edict was published that the wise men should be put to death. And they sought out Daniel and his companions to kill them. The king, very angry, ordered all the wise men of Babylon to be killed. The severity of the punishment was not out of tune with the customs of those times. However, it was a reckless step for the king because the men whose death he had ordered constituted the most cultured class in society. So he pronounced the blunt sentence that all the wise men, including Daniel and his companions, were put to death. The punishment decreed by Nebuchadnezzar was very common among the Babylonians. Even the Hebrews themselves had practiced the dismemberment of captives as a manifestation of extreme judgment. Nebuchadnezzar added to this horror the confiscation of property and the desecration of the victims' homes, turning them into dunghills, that is, public latrines. In sixth place, Daniel asks for time to reveal the dream and the interpretation of it to the king. Let's read verses 14 to 16. Then Daniel spoke wisely and prudently to Arioch, captain of the king's guard, who had gone out to kill the wise men of Babylon. He spoke and said to Arioch, the king's captain, "What is the reason why this edict is published from the king so hastily?" Then Arioch told Daniel what was there. And Daniel went in and asked the king to give him time, and that he would show the interpretation to the king. Although Daniel and his companions had not been summoned by the king, they were still involved in the edict to kill the wise men of Babylon. They were also included in the execution. When Daniel learned the nature of the edict and the reason for its severity, he immediately presented himself to the king. The fact that he had such a possibility of access testifies to the high position he had achieved in the exams he had so recently passed. In the presence of Nebuchadnezzar, Daniel boldly stated that if given time, he would show the interpretation to the king. Evidently, Daniel's sincerity and firm confidence impressed the king, who had just been furious at the desperate manipulations of the wise men. In seventh place, Daniel meets with his companions and they pray to God, asking for mercy and revelation about the king's dream. Daniel's action was what would be expected of what he was, a man of God. He called his 3 companions and they engaged in a period of desperate intercessory prayer. The answer to that prayer did not take long to arrive. When Daniel himself saw the dream in a night vision, he burst into a song of exultant praise to God. Let's read verses from 20 to 23. And Daniel spoke and said, "Blessed be the name of God from age to age, for his are power and wisdom. He changes times and ages. He removes kings and sets up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to the understanding. He reveals the deep and the hidden. He knows what is in darkness, and with him dwells the light. To you, O God of my fathers, I thank you and praise you, because you have given me wisdom and strength, and now you have revealed to me what we ask of you. For you have made known to us the matter of the king." Now, in order to enter the king's presence, Daniel had to arrive first with Arioch. Now he tells him not to destroy the wise men of Babylon, since he can now declare the king's dream and give the interpretation of it. Daniel's trust in God and in the response he had received was complete. Note what the text says, "I will show him the interpretation." The vision that God had given him was identical to the one the king had seen, because both had been given by God. So he didn't even need to ask the king what his dream had been. When the king, doubting, asked if Daniel could accomplish such a difficult task, he was faced with a man who was on firmer ground than the soil of Babylon. Daniel humbly declared that the source of his knowledge was a revelation from a God in heaven who reveals secrets. He rejected all ideas of his own wisdom. Furthermore, this particular revelation was addressed by God to the king himself, so that he could know the thoughts of his own heart and what will happen in the last days. Let's read verse 28. "But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries, and he has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what will happen in the last days. Here is your dream and the visions you have had in your bed." In ninth place, Daniel reveals the dream to the king. Let's read verses 29 and 30. "While you, O king, were in your bed, thoughts came to you to know what would be in the future. And he who reveals mysteries showed you what must be. And this mystery has been revealed to me, not because there is more wisdom in me than in all living things, but so that the interpretation may be made known to the king, and so that you may understand the thoughts of your heart. Nebuchadnezzar longed to know the destiny of his kingdom, and God revealed it to him through a dream. This was a portent of what would happen in the future. Dear listener, let us never forget the divine plan is underway until God will intervene in human history to establish his eternal kingdom. From now on, we will focus on analyzing Nebuchadnezzar's dream and Daniel's interpretation. Let's read verses 31 to 35. You, O king, saw and behold a great image. This image, which was very large, and whose glory was very sublime, stood before you, and its appearance was terrible. The head of this image was of fine gold, his chest and arms of silver, his belly and his thighs of bronze, his legs of iron, his feet partly of iron and partly of baked clay. You were looking until a stone was cut out without hands and struck the image on its feet of iron and clay and broke them into pieces. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver and the gold were also broken into pieces and were like chaff from the summer threshing floors, and the wind carried them away without leaving any trace of them. But the stone that struck the image became a great mountain that filled the whole earth. The dream that Nebuchadnezzar had had was relatively simple. He had seen an image that was very great, whose glory was sublime and its appearance terrible. It looked like this because apart from its colossal size, it was composed of various metals, which gave it splendor and shine. In any case, the image did not remain upright for long, because a stone hit its feet and crumbled it until it was turned into chaff blown away by the wind. And the stone that struck the image became a great mountain that filled the whole earth. Now, what was really important was the interpretation of the dream, which is what Daniel is going to explain next. The statue symbolizes the ebb and flow of the most influential governments over the centuries. Guided by his divine inspiration, the prophet described how great empires would arise one after another throughout history, leaving an indelible mark on human development. In a story that spans from the past to the future, Daniel glimpsed the rise of the most powerful and significant empires that would shape the destiny of the world throughout the centuries. It is a visual representation of the constant change in power and authority in human history, leading up to the time when the divine rule of Christ will be established on this earth. Now, at this time, let's detail the information about the statue. First empire, the head of gold. Let's read verses 36 to 38 where its interpretation is. This is the dream. We will also tell the interpretation of it in the presence of the king. You, O king, are king of kings, because the God of heaven has given you kingdom, power, strength, and majesty. And wherever the sons of men, beasts of the field, and birds of the air dwell, he has delivered them into your hand, and has given you dominion over all. You are that head of gold. The golden head symbolizes the powerful Babylonian Empire. When Daniel tells the king, "You are that head of gold," he refers to Nebuchadnezzar as the one who represents the Neo-Babylonian Empire. Gold represents the splendor and wealth of the Babylonian Empire. This interpretation refers to the fact that Babylon was considered one of the most opulent and powerful civilizations of its time, with great wealth accumulated through conquest and trade. The golden head symbolizes the height of this empire and its dominance over other nations. Now, this empire, which reached its peak under the reign of Nebuchadnezzar in the 6th century before Christ, it was one of the first world powers recognized for its splendor and dominance in the region of Mesopotamia. Babylon, the capital of the empire, was an impressive and cosmopolitan city, known for its imposing wall and its majestic temples and palaces, such as the famous Hanging Gardens, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. In addition to their architectural achievements, the Babylonians also made significant contributions in areas such as astronomy and mathematical sciences, developing writing systems such as cuneiform and creating the famous Code of Hammurabi, one of the first known sets of written laws. The Babylonian Empire stood out for its political and military control in the region, as well as for its economic wealth, derived from trade and agriculture. However, his power did not last forever. Now, what was the fall of Babylon like? The fall of the Babylonian Empire is recorded in the book of Daniel, chapter 5. In this account, Belshazzar, grandson of the famous King Nebuchadnezzar, celebrates a feast using the sacred utensils of the Jerusalem temple, thus desecrating the sacred objects. During the feast, a spectral hand appears and writes a mysterious message on the wall that no one can understand. Daniel is called to interpret the message. Let's read verses 24 and 31 of chapter 5 of the book of Daniel. Then from his presence was sent the hand that wrote this writing, and the writing that he traced is Mene, Mene, Tekel, Upharsin. This is the interpretation of the matter. Mene, God has counted your kingdom and has put an end to it. Tekel, you have been weighed in the balance, and you were found wanting. Peres, your kingdom has been broken and given to the Medes and the Persians. Then Belshazzar ordered to dress Daniel in purple and put a gold necklace around his neck and proclaimed that he was the third lord of the kingdom. The same night, Belshazzar, king of the Chaldeans, was killed, and Darius of Media took the kingdom, being 62 years old. Cyrus the Great invaded the city of Babylon by diverting the course of the Euphrates River that ran through the city, allowing his troops to enter through the dry riverbed. Belshazzar is assassinated, and the empire falls into the hands of the Medes Persians. This fulfilled the first part of the prophecy announced by Daniel, where the golden head represented the Babylonian Empire and gave way to the emergence of a new empire, the Medes Persians. This corroborated what was predicted by Jeremiah, who noted that the brilliant Babylonian Empire would be destroyed 70 years after the Jewish captivity. Let's read Jeremiah chapter 25, verse 12. And when the 70 years are completed, I will punish the king of Babylon and that nation for their iniquity, says the Lord, and the land of the Chaldeans, and I will turn it into deserts forever. The second empire, breasts and arms of silver, are the Medes Persians. Let's read chapter 2, verse 39 of Daniel. And after you there will arise another kingdom inferior to yours, and then a third kingdom of bronze, which will rule over the entire earth. After the fall of the Babylonian Empire in the year 539 before Christ, before the conquest of the Medo-Persian Empire, this new power emerged represented by silver in Daniel's vision. Compared to the greatness of the Babylonian Empire, the Medo-Persian Empire was seen as inferior, which is why it was symbolically associated with silver. Just as gold is considered more valuable than silver, although the latter has its own value, the supremacy of the Babylonian Empire over the Medo-Persian was evident. Now, the silver breast symbolizes the centralized authority of the government, while the brazen arms represent the union of two peoples under that government. The Medo-Persian Empire, also known as the Achaemenid Empire, was formed from the union of two ancient civilizations, the Medes and the Persians. The Medes, an Indo-European people who lived in Media, established a powerful kingdom in the 7th century before Christ, with Ecbatana as its capital. On the other hand, the Persians, an Iranian people south of Media, united under the leadership of Cyrus the Great, who defeated the Medes. After this triumph, Cyrus established the Medo-Persian Empire. The initial capital of the empire was Pasargadae, but it was later moved to Persepolis by Darius I. Under the leadership of Cyrus II and his successors, the empire expanded rapidly, conquering extensive territories in the Middle East and Asia Minor. This unification marked the beginning of a new era in the region and laid the foundation for one of the largest and most enduring empires of the ancient world. The Medo-Persian Empire lasted 208 years. In verse 5 of chapter 7 of Daniel, the Medes Persians are described as follows. And behold, another second beast like a bear stood on one side more than the other, and had 3 ribs between its teeth and its mouth. And it was said thus to him, Arise, devour much meat. The bear represents the Medo-Persian Empire. In this companionship between the Medes and the Persians dominated the relationship. Most think that the 3 ribs represent his 3 great military conquests, Babylon, Egypt, and Lydia. The slow and overwhelming army of the Medo-Persian Empire was well known. They simply crushed their opponents with superior size and strength. Now, the conquest of the Persians by Alexander the Great was a process that took place between the years 334 and 331 before Christ. During this time, Alexander launched a series of military campaigns culminating in the Battle of Gaugamela, where he defeated the Persian king Darius III. After this victory, Alexander advanced towards Persepolis, the Persian capital, and captured it in the year 330 before Christ. This conquest marked the end of the Persian Empire and established Hellenistic rule over the region, beginning a new era in the history of the Middle East and Central Asia. The Third Empire, symbolized by the bronze belly and thighs, represented the Greek Empire established by Alexander the Great. Let's read verse 39. "And after you, there will arise another kingdom inferior to yours, and then a third kingdom of bronze, which will rule over the entire earth." The Greek Empire under the leadership of Alexander the Great. In a short period of time, he managed to conquer all known territory from the Mediterranean Sea to India, thus fulfilling the prophecy. The legacy of Alexander the Great goes beyond his military conquests. His empire fostered the spread of Greek culture throughout the Middle East and Asia, a process known as Hellenization, which left a lasting mark on the history of the ancient world. Alexander the Great is remembered as one of the greatest military leaders and visionaries in history. In Daniel chapter 7 verse 6, we also find another reference to the Greek Empire of Alexander the Great. Let's read the biblical story. "After this I looked, and behold another like a leopard with 4 wings of a bird on its back. This beast also had 4 heads, and dominion was given to him." The leopard is a figure that represents Greece. Its 4 bird wings speak of the rapid expansion of the Greek Empire. 4 is the number of the world. The phrase 4 bird wings on their backs emphasizes the speed with which Alexander managed to conquer Asia, putting an end to the Medo-Persian Empire. In 13 years, Alexander conquered the known world, reaching as far east as India. This Third World Empire is described symbolically with the phrase, "This beast also had 4 heads." No doubt this refers to the fact that Alexander's kingdom after his death was divided into 4 parts, each having one of his 4 generals as governor. Let's see what it tells us in Daniel chapter 8 verse 8. "And the goat became exceedingly great, but being in his greatest strength, that great horn was broken, and in its place 4 other notable horns went out towards the 4 winds of heaven." Let's also read verses 21 and 22 of chapter 8. "The goat is the king of Greece, and the great horn that was between his eyes is the first king. And as for the horn that was broken, and 4 took its place, it means that 4 kingdoms will arise from that nation, although not with the strength of it." The death of Alexander the Great in the year 323 before Christ, it set off a series of events that led to the division of his vast empire among his generals, known as the Diadochi. Alexander's generals are mainly Ptolemy, Seleucus, Lysimachus, and Cassander. They fought for control of the empire. These struggles resulted in a series of wars known as the Diadochi Wars, which lasted several decades and led to the fragmentation of the empire into several Hellenistic kingdoms. The major kingdoms that emerged from the division of Alexander's empire included Ptolemy in Egypt, Cassander in Macedonia and Greece, Seleucus in Syria and Babylon, and Lysimachus in Thrace. These Hellenistic kingdoms maintained Greek influence in their respective regions for several centuries and contributed to the cultural and political development of the ancient world. The Hellenistic era, characterized by the interaction between Greek, Persian, Egyptian, and Eastern cultures, continued until the Roman conquest of Egypt in the 30s before Christ, when the Hellenistic period ended and the Roman era began. The Greek Empire lasted about 185 years. The Fourth Empire, symbolized by its legs of iron, his feet, partly of iron and partly of baked clay, represented the Roman Empire. Let's read Daniel chapter 2 from verses 40 to 43. "And the 4th kingdom will be strong as iron, and as iron breaks and breaks all things, it will break and break everything. And what you see of the feet and toes, partly of potter's clay and partly of iron, will be a divided kingdom, but there will be in it some of the strength of iron, just as you saw iron mixed with baked clay. And because the toes are partly iron and partly clay, the kingdom will be partly strong and partly fragile. Just as you saw iron mixed with clay, they will be mixed through human alliances, but they will not be united with each other, as iron does not mix with clay. Rome is the fourth empire prophesied by Daniel. It began as a small, insignificant city-state that quickly rose above Italy in the 3rd century before Christ. This empire is compared to an iron that crumbles, since it crushed all the peoples it found in its path and subdued them. In Daniel chapter 7, verse 7, we also find another reference to the Roman Empire. After this I looked in the visions of the night, and behold the fourth beast, frightful and terrible and very strong, which had large teeth of iron. She devoured and broke into pieces, and trampled the remains with her feet. And she was very different from all the beasts that I saw before her, and she had 10 horns. This beast differs from the other three in several ways. Firstly, it stands out for its treatment of its victims, since it has large iron teeth that devour and tear them to pieces. The actions of this beast have disastrous consequences for its enemies, as can be seen in the destruction of Jerusalem in the year 70 after Christ. However, its most notable characteristic is its tendency to persecute others. During the rule of the Roman Empire, the birth, crucifixion, and resurrection of Christ occurred, and Christianity began to be established. Followers of Christianity faced severe persecutions from the Roman Empire. The emperors of the Roman Empire exercised their authority to subdue and conquer various nations and peoples. Through military campaigns and diplomatic strategies, they actively expanded the empire's borders and consolidated their control over vast regions. Emperors such as Augustus, Trajan, and Hadrian are known for their conquests and expansion of Roman territory, although we must not also forget Julius Caesar. All of them used the military power of the empire to subdue various nations, including the Gallic tribes, the Germanic peoples, the regions of North Africa, parts of Asia Minor, and beyond. These conquests not only ensured Roman dominance over strategic territories and natural resources, but also facilitated the integration of new peoples and cultures into the empire. Furthermore, military victories provided emperors with a source of legitimacy and prestige within the Roman state. The Fourth Empire symbolizes the feet and fingers, partly of potter's clay and partly of iron. This represents the division of the Roman Empire that took place during the reign of Diocletian in the year 285 after Christ. He divided it into two halves for easy management. This is how the Eastern Roman Empire, also known as the Byzantine Empire, and the Western Roman Empire are created. The Eastern Roman Empire, with its capital in Constantinople, known today as Istanbul, in Turkey. This city was also the location of the ancient city of Byzantium and was the capital of the Eastern Roman Empire until its defeat at the hands of the Ottomans in 1453. Secondly, there is the Western Roman Empire, whose capital is Rome, according to legend founded in the year 753 before Christ by Romulus and Remus, two abandoned children who were suckled by a wolf. This part of the empire was defeated by the barbarians in the year 476 after Christ. Although the ancient Roman Empire seemed indestructible, it was buried by its serious internal crises. The lives of the emperors or Caesars of Rome became known for their sexual immorality, as some practiced bisexuality. Now, the Roman Empire did not disappear completely with the fall of Constantinople. In reality, Rome managed to maintain its power by using the Catholic religion as a form of oppression over different peoples and cultures, imposing a false religion under the guise of Christianity. The story of the Holy Inquisition, in which millions of people, including Jews, lost their lives for resisting accepting this false religion, is a clear example of this. Although Rome has geographically disappeared as an empire, its powerful influence has endured throughout history to the present day. Leaders such as Napoleon, Adolf Hitler, among others, attempted to revive the past glories of Rome by merging all European countries into a single continental nation under their leadership. They were fully aware that whoever could rule Europe would rule the entire world, but they did not achieve their goal. However, in 1957, through what was curiously called the Treaty of Rome, what we know today as the European Economic Community or European Union was born. The most powerful government in human history in political, economic, and military terms is being created in Europe. Should we ask ourselves if this will fulfill Daniel's prophecy? Let's read verse 43. Just as you saw iron mixed with clay, they will be mixed through human alliances, but they will not be united with each other, as iron does not mix with clay. This verse will help us clarify that what happened in Europe in recent years is completely true. The prophet Daniel predicted that they would be united through human alliances, political agreements, and diplomatic treaties, managing to unite different countries without abolishing the independence and sovereignty of the nations and autonomous states that compose them. This has become practically impossible according to the most renowned political scientists in the world, but now it is a palpable reality. According to verse 42, we are told, "And because the toes are partly iron and partly clay, the kingdom will be partly strong and partly fragile." Mud is composed of two opposite elements, water and earth, and the mixture with iron, an element foreign to these two components, clearly reflects that both in the present and in the future, international politics and diplomacy, not only in Europe, will be saturated with international agreements between very different members to consolidate and then impose on the world the process called globalization. In Europe, in the midst of this historical, social, cultural, religious, political, and economic context, soon in the days of the end, the Roman Empire will re-emerge, being the scene of the manifestation of the Antichrist, the definitive beast. Let's read Daniel chapter 7, verse 8. "While I was looking at the horns, behold, another little horn came up among them, and before it 3 of the first horns were plucked out. And behold, this horn had eyes like that of a man, and a mouth that spoke great things." Through modern democracy, they will elect a common leader to guide them in the final moments of humanity. Dear listeners, we can notice that biblical prophecy is present both in the books of the prophet Daniel and in the Apocalypse. While it is true that the book of the prophet Daniel contains historical facts, it also includes numerous future events that have yet to be fulfilled. Finally, let us consider the eternal reign of Christ. Let's take a look at verses 44 and 45 of chapter 2 of the prophet Daniel. "And in the days of these kings, the God of heaven will raise up a kingdom that will never be destroyed, nor will the kingdom be left to another people. He will break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, but he will remain forever, just as you saw that a stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, which broke into pieces the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold. The great God has shown the king what will happen in the future, and the dream is true, and its interpretation is faithful." The vision is completed when the statue representing human rule on earth and the kingdoms that have conquered and territorially dominated Israel throughout history are supernaturally destroyed. When the statue is knocked down by a rock that hits the image and completely destroys it, no trace of it remains. This symbolizes the theocratic rule of Jesus, the Messiah, who will take control of the earth by defeating the Antichrist at Armageddon. Jesus will rule the earth for 1,000 years until the end of the world, and into eternity, his kingdom will be eternal. Let's read in Daniel chapter 7, verses 13 and 14. "I looked in the night vision, and behold, with the clouds of heaven, there came one like a son of man, who came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. And dominion, glory, and kingdom were given to him, that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an eternal dominion, which will never pass away, and his kingdom is one that will not be destroyed." Dear listeners, you can be sure that the present world order will not last forever, but that the kingdom of God will last forever. And so we come to the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed the content and found it useful. See you in the next video. God bless you.